this is really bizarre what happened in the last couple of days on this Democrat caucus, which voted, the Democrat House caucus, which voted 218-1 in favor of a federal law enshrining a right to abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. The Congressional Democrats' abortion bill would require that all 50 states allow abortion after viability until birth if a lone health care provider determines the pregnancy poses a risk to the parents, to the pregnant patient's mental health. Okay, so there's a couple things we have to talk about here. Now, first off, I want to preface this all by saying this is where I get more pushback than on anything else from my conservative and right-leaning audience, although I do have to say, without question, it's always done respectfully and thoughtfully. As you guys know, in the book, it's right there, it's right behind me, in Don't Burn This Book, I lay out my position on every political issue of our time, and the most difficult section to write was about abortion. Because it brings up existential issues, it brings up philosophical issues and religious issues and scientific issues, and it brings up legal issues. I mean, I found it to be the most difficult to write. It was actually the only chapter in the book that I asked for any help from anyone, and I had like a lot of interesting conversations, not only with David, but with Candace Owens and with Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager, and I talked to several pro-choice people, and I talked to my sister, I mean, a whole bunch of people. My position on abortion is that I acknowledge that when the sperm meets the egg, it's life. I do. I know it. We're in the midst of surrogacy right now. Okay, I know that when the sperm meets the egg, and then the next thing you got a blastocyst and you got an embryo, it's like it has to start somewhere. It doesn't just magically start when you want it to start. I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that in a pluralistic society where people have all sorts of beliefs and all sorts of religious views and all of those things, you want to give the maximum amount of freedom to the maximum amount of people. I also don't want the government making decisions for people. So that's why this is so complex. So I completely get the pro-life position, which is conception, it's a life, we have to protect life. Now, what the conservatives and the right-leaning people don't do that well on this is, okay, if you're going to say women, you cannot get an abortion, well, are you going to help that woman during those 9 months of pregnancy? Are you going to help that woman once the baby is born, and are you going to fund things and everything else? Do you want the government to do that? Because you usually don't want the government to do that, so you're going to put that all on private churches and temples and things of that nature, nonprofits. We don't really have that discussion that often. But I've discussed this on the show. You could watch some of my previous interviews with Ben Shapiro and Dennis Prager and other people that are pro-life. What I've said to them is that it's not that their arguments on abortion have made me sort of more, I don't want to say anti-choice, but more pro-life. It's that the left has gone so bananas with this, like they do with everything without exception, that is what has made me more pro-life. So I used to say 20 weeks. 20 weeks used to be the position where doctors basically said the fetus could feel pain. And I felt that was a bridge too far. And then of course we can talk about exemptions related to direct health, physical health of the mother. Interestingly, in this bill that the Democrats just passed 218-1, if you heard the last sentence that I said there, it's now about posing a risk to the pregnant patient's mental health. Mental health, yeah, that's very different than physical health. And you only need one healthcare provider to say it. So you literally could just find a nurse. You could find a friend who's a nurse, and you could be 7 months pregnant and be like, I just am not in the mood to do this anymore. I'm kind of depressed. And it's like, abortion time. That's literally what this will lead to. So this is just messy all over the place, okay? It's messy all over the place. But as I've said to Shapiro and Prager and some of my other, and Glenn Beck, some of my other pro-life friends, it's not that their arguments are so convincing to me, right? Because I want the state out of the way, and I want people to be able to make choices for themselves, and we can discuss the life or death situation and all that. It's that the left goes so crazy with it that it's like, man, I don't want these people near any decision related to a woman, a man, or a child, or anyone else. If you think that 8-month abortions are okay, if you think that 5-month abortions are okay, like you need to be examined. And again, we can talk about the exemptions. We can talk about when there's a true risk to that woman's health. We can talk about when there is a horrific genetic disease that child will never be able to live a fully actualized life. Like we could have if you guys weren't so nuts about everything, we could honestly have those discussions. Again, that's what a healthy society would do, right? It's the same thing as the border story we just covered. In a healthy society, you would take a complex topic. We want to be open and pluralistic and allow people to come here, and we're a nation of immigrants. But we can't let everybody in, but you can't even have that because you're racist. And in this case, if you have the honest discussion about when does life begin, what should a society do, do you want the government making decisions for women, blah, 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 and for the baby, you either hate women or you hate babies or the rest of it. So we got to get better at some of this stuff.